Oh hey, didn't see you there with a swarm of mosquitoes or mosquito-like creatures. Welcome to another edition of Socrates Explains Everything. My name is Socrates. I like to explain things. We're here nestled down under a hill on a really windy day out here in Malden at a old fort. It seemed nice and safe. Seemed a proper place to discuss an unfortunate date, since today is a day with 6 million coronavirus cases around the world. And this last million, this one only took 10 days. The shortest one so far. We had 134,000 new cases just yesterday around the world, and almost 370,000 people have passed away at least. So by no means is this crisis over. The pandemic is growing. This is the highest total, one-day total for the world. If you look on the world graph, you can see that the trend is still going up. Every peak is a higher high, and every trough is a higher low. That is the definition of an uptrend. And I look at the new cases because it's a leading indicator. It happens first, as opposed to deaths, which is a trailing indicator, which happens last. So to know where you are in the cycle, looking at the leading indicators is the first clue that we're finally getting through this thing. And worldwide, we are definitely not. And of course, if you look at individual countries like the United States, which unfortunately is still and will be leading this for quite some time, they have 24,000 new cases at 1.7 million total, and still growing at 1.3%. Now again, the trend is downwards. The highs are lower and the lows are lower, and that's a downtrend. But the problem is it's sort of a cycling, the same in the world, where there's fewer in hot spots like New York City, but more everywhere else. In the world there's fewer in places like Italy, Spain, but more absolutely everywhere else. So we're sort of cycling from one area to the next. At this point you look at Brazil as a clear example of cycling up. 33,000 new cases, even more than America, and a 6% growth rate. So the pandemic in Brazil is just out of control. It's truly exploding, almost without bounds. This will grow at around 10 or 12% if you really let it go crazy. So they're at least holding it down slightly, but nothing like they should. And followed quickly behind with Russia, 21,000 new cases and a 5% growth rate. Again, they have just barely started to slow it down now, and they have a whole lot more to go. In the UK, they're starting to ease their lockdown, probably too soon, with 2,000 new cases, but it's only at 0.7% of the total, so at least there is that, but have to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. Then you have a whole group of countries that have high totals, but now very low numbers because they shut it down successfully. Spain, Italy, Germany, they're all down to a very low number of new cases and a very low total percentage. It's pretty obvious when you look at India, with 8,000 new cases in India and more than 1 billion people to infect potentially, at a 4% growth rate. The unfortunate sky is a limit in India, so hopefully they won't reach that. With Turkey, they've done again good job, like the Italian and other Spanish countries in Europe. They're down to a mere 1,000 new cases and 0.6% growth rate, so even better than the UK. But Peru, it looks like a huge single-day spike. It'll probably be lower tomorrow, but on average it's about 10,000 new cases a day, which is about a 6% growth rate, and that's again almost out of control. Iran is the most frightening one because they're rebounding something fierce. They had it almost stamped out, or at least well put down, and now with 2,500 new cases and a 1.6% growth compared to their overall numbers, they're really looking in a bad situation and should warn the whole world. We've got some that weren't on the list before, Chile, with 4,000 new cases and a 4% growth rate. And some of these graphs are frightening because they're just such perfect exponential growth rates, and that's just not a good thing. Mexico, 1,000 new cases and a 3% growth rate. Bangladesh, 2,000 new cases and a 4% growth rate. Then you get down to the Netherlands. All these have more than the Netherlands, which had more than them to begin with. And we just had 132 new cases and a 0.3% growth rate, which is really good if you happen to be living in the Netherlands making videos. Now, everyone likes to compare to Sweden, and they had 630 new cases, about a 2% growth rate. So they're slowly catching up to the Netherlands every day, unfortunately for them. And South Africa is sneaking onto this thing with 1,000 new cases and a 3% growth rate. So it's definitely looking frightening. And then there's a bunch of countries in South America and in Asia and in the Middle East that are starting to really blow up. Egypt, Argentina, Afghanistan, Oman, and Bolivia. You can see the growth on that chart is just not healthy. I realize it's a chart of illness, so I guess that makes some sense. But so if you think this thing is over yet, it's definitely not over. Even if it's over for your local area, it's definitely not going to be over economically, because the impact of this is going to go on for a while. We haven't even started to see the bankruptcies and foreclosures as people stop being able to pay their mortgages and their rents. So unfortunately, we need to attack this. The harder you attack it, the quicker it'll be over. You can look at some of the graphs that have gone quickly by, and you can see that they've moved past it, as opposed to countries like America that are just dragging themselves through the coals on this thing. I'm worried that there's going to be a spike in the U.S. cases. It seems almost inevitable, but I guess we'll see soon. Sometimes you got to prepare for the worst and hope it doesn't happen. Eventually, you get a nice monument that you can hang out in, years later. I ran out of stuff to say.